As a matter of urgency, we will provide a loan backed by the European Union budget. This will address the urgent financial needs of Ukraine. The Union reserves its right to make use of the immobilized asset to repay this loan. At the same time, we gave a mandate to the Commission to continue working on the reparation loan based on Russian immobilized assets.
OK, for more, let's bring in Bloomberg's chief Europe correspondent, Oliver Crook, who, of course, has been following all the details for us. Ollie, tell us exactly what was agreed and what the nature of this loan is, given that these frozen Russian assets are not now being used.
Yeah, Tom, that wasn't clear to you exactly on what the mechanism is there. I mean, so this is a very complicated solution by the European Union. Depending on who you ask, it's an intensely elegant solution to a very complex problem, or to another, it might be a very sort of elaborate can-kicking to basically keep those Russian mobile assets immobilized, get the money to Ukraine from the European budget, and say that later on, if that loan will only be repaid if Russia repays Ukraine, and those Russian assets will be used in the stead. So that is effectively the mechanism that's in place here. Rather than seizing the Russian assets, making that decision today, it's keeping them under European control so that in the future, that when it comes time to actually repay that loan, the Russian assets can be used for that. So that is sort of deferring that decision to a large degree. It satisfies many of the concerns that the Belgians had throughout this process. And we should say that that 90 billion euro loan that is being backed by the European Union from the budget of the European Union, there are also some carve-outs there. It does not need to be backed by all of the member states. Hungary, Slovakia, the Czech Republic are all ones that objected to it. There was a unanimous vote on this, but those three countries, for example, will not be put on the hook to back that loan. So what this does in the short term, Tom, is it does get the financing needs to Ukraine as they need them. We know that they're basically running out of money in the first quarter of next year. This will bring that stopgap, but in some ways, it really kicks the can down the road in terms of figuring out what to do with those Russian assets. Because remember, Tom, there's no sort of reality in which many of these sort of political parties in Germany and France of the far right would sort of take on a debt burden to try to fund Ukraine. So this is the other thing that they're trying to balance there. Friedrich Merz and Emmanuel Macron, everyone seems fairly satisfied with this decision. That being said, it really leaves the sort of more difficult discussions to a later date.
OK, so still questions further down the line with the two-year deal, at least tying Ukraine over beyond that period of the first quarter next year, as you say, when financing would become particularly tight. The other big issue that you've been walking us through and giving us the detail and context on in the lead-up to this meeting, Ollie, is the EU-Mercosur trade deal, a mammoth trade deal that's been, what, more than 2 decades in the making, but it's been delayed again. What's happened there?
Yeah, so 25 years in the making, and they're going to have to wait another 3 weeks or so. And I think Ursula von der Leyen sort of nodded to this in her press conference yesterday that, you know, it's been 25 years. What's another 3 weeks? And effectively, the French and the Italians were not satisfied by the sort of safeguards that would be put in place for the farmers in case sort of pricing gets out of whack, imports get sort of flooded into the market. They want to have an emergency brake within the clause to make sure that they can pause the trade deal and sort of amend it going forward. And also, of course, there's the issue of, you know, things like pesticides. They need to have the same rules that are applied on the goods that are coming into the EU as they impose on the farmers within the EU. And Tom, this is obviously a very emotive issue because the farmers were here in Brussels yesterday. The tractors were lining the roads of Brussels in protest to a number of things, including the Mercosur deal. But we heard from Emmanuel Macron at length. He was questioned at length about this in the doorstep, saying that basically, you know, he needs to show two sides. One, that he's standing up for the French farmers, but on the other side, I think he does really want to see this deal get through, get over the line. Same thing with Giorgia Meloni. You'll remember that the president of Brazil said basically, you need to sign this deal by Saturday or it's not going to get signed in my mandate. He's walked that back a little bit after a conversation with Giorgia Meloni. So the new date to watch for, Tom, from what we understand, is January the 12th. That's when this trade deal could get put into place. And we should say it's very important for the Europeans. It's very important for Latin America. Why? Because everybody's trying to diversify away from the United States, but to do so intelligently so they don't have some of the same trading problems that they have had with other countries in the past.